at the Architectural Association.
Thank you, Eyal. Thank you, Maria. I will keep it a bit shorter, but basically the idea was that we take you through one of the examples of one of the cases that we've worked on as one of the examples of anti-fascist or non-fascist struggle. So this here, where I'm going to try to kind of summarize the investigation of the Golden Dawn killing of Pavlos Fyssas, that really came as a chapter 2, let's say, of the NSU investigation, because it started when we met in April last year, 2017. We met a woman called Magda Fyssa, who was the mother of Pavlos Fyssas, a young Greek anti-fascist rapper who was murdered by Golden Dawn. So Pavlos Fyssas was living in Keratsini, in a neighborhood in Piraeus, in Athens, quite a working-class neighborhood that is quite infiltrated by Golden Dawn. And for example, this is the Golden Dawn unit that was responsible for his murder. So this is the Nikia group. Just to cover some ground, Golden Dawn is a neo-Nazi organization, but who has been operative since the 80s, mostly as a paramilitary organization with quite a strict military structure. But as of 2012, they also have representation in the Greek parliament. They won 7%, and so they had, I think currently they have 16 seats. So the night of Pavlos Fyssas' murder, only this man was arrested. His name is Giorgos Zourpakias. He was arrested at the scene because he just stayed around after the murder happened. And only after, even though this murder was not the first Golden Dawn member, and even though this murder came at the peak of Golden Dawn's criminal activities, there have been no arrests so far. Only after the murder of Pavlos, because perhaps we can say he was Greek, and the other murders, for example, were members of the migrant communities, there has been a series of arrests, and then the trial began. So there were 69 defendants, 18 members of parliament, and the starting of this trial was really based on a kind of forgotten article of the Greek Criminal Code, Article 187, paragraph 1, which defines the nature of a criminal organization. So up until that moment, the Greek government was quite reluctant to proceed in a series of arrests. It was even stopping the police's work in doing that. And so they based that kind of support, the silent support and reluctancy in starting to kind of arrest people on the basis of kind of a statutory, constitutional understanding that we do not prosecute ideologies, but we prosecute acts. And so on that premise, there was no way that we could say that Golden Dawn is criminal because it presents an ideology. So on the 28th of September 2013, after the murder of Pavlos, which was an undeniable act of criminality, so 10 days after the murder of Pavlos, the Greek police arrested all of the leadership of Golden Dawn, as well as tens of its party's officials and members who were involved in the criminal activity from 2008. So the series of arrests, you can see what some of the MPs look like, followed the beginning, started the beginning of the trial, which started on the 20th of April 2015 after quite a long process of gathering evidence. And the trial itself has been described as one of the largest trials since the most important trial against the fascist organization since Nuremberg, really, because it's not just a trial that is looking at a particular terrorist group or a fascist group, but it is looking at a political movement, a political group, a group that has representation in a parliament. So the question here, the trial is trying to define 4 things, three cases, 1 murder, 2 attempted murders. One of them was an attempted murder of Golden Dawn to some Egyptian fishermen. The second was an attempted murder of some communists in Greece. And then the 4th thing that they're trying to define is whether Golden Dawn is a criminal organization, regardless of if they have in fact committed any crime. To be a criminal organization, all you need to prove is that there is an intention to have a criminal activity. And so for that reason, they have sourced hundreds of pieces of evidence from raiding Golden Dawn members' families, homes, and finding weapons, books that show the alignment with the German Nazis. As well as documents that outline the very structure of the organization that is, as we said, a very clear very clear military structure. So on the 20th of April 2015, the trial starts. It starts in a courtroom in the women's prisons in Korydallos, which is not very central to Athens. The space has been remodeled for the purpose of the trial. And I will read you a short extract from Golden Dawn Watch, which is monitoring the trial of that day. Despite the heightened interest engendered by this trial, expressed both by the public at large and by journalists on a national and international platform, the inaugural meeting was consigned to said drastically inappropriate venue. The relevant authorities had made no provisions to accommodate the breadth of interest the trial would garner. This resulted in the de facto barring of the public from the proceedings. The venue in which today's meeting unfolded cannot under any circumstances accommodate a great number of the accused or the lawyers of the victims. There are not enough seats for the lawyers for the defense and for interested journalists, while the exclusive presence of certified persons essentially barred the public from the courtroom. The sound system in place was gravely lacking, and much of what was said during the course of today's meeting could not be grasped by everyone, the result of which was the perpetual intervention of journalists appealing to the court to ensure the publicity of the event. So this is how one of the most important trials begins. After that, there has been a kind of some sort of resolution where half of the days the trial is being held in the actual official court of appeal, which sometimes is being booked by other trials. Sometimes they go back into that small courtroom. And so at this time, it has been more than 3 years that the trial has been going on. It has collected a plethora of evidence that really proves Golden Dawn's criminal activity. The evidence, I have to say, is overwhelming. However, similar to the NSU case, although the evidence does incriminate specific people, and it is quite overwhelming, it is much, much harder to reveal the network support that Golden Dawn has had throughout the years. For example, the trial is quite reluctant to examine the silent support of the police in covering or turning a blind eye to Golden Dawn's crimes. So this is somehow the context within which we are called to come and collaborate in this case. The murder of Pavlos is a prime example of this in action, and the silent enablement that has allowed the act to have taken place. Because according to witness testimonies, and even the police themselves, this special police force unit called Dias was present at the time of the killing. So just to contextualize a little bit, the Greek police force has been found to vote almost more than 50% of the Greek police is voting for Golden Dawn. And somehow there is an ideological alliance. This has been, I can give you an anecdote where this has been kind of showcased in a moment where a Greek criminologist called Anastasia Tsoukala went to train the police academy on issues of migration. So she entered an amphitheater a bit bigger than this, and she started kind of explaining the issues that come with policing migration, etc. And at some point she was interrupted by one of the policemen who said, "Wait a minute, you are talking about these people as if they are like us, Greek citizens." To which she said, "Sure, but you're also sounding like Golden Dawn." His response was, "Of course I am Golden Dawn, I'm very proud to be Golden Dawn." To which she responded, "It is really none of my concern what you vote for, what your ideology is, but could I trust that on duty you will operate under the letter of the law?" And he replies, "Well, how could you ask me to do something that I do not believe in sometimes?" To which the amphitheater applauded. At some point, the conversation resulted in something like her saying, "You have given an oath on the Bible," because this is usually what people give oaths to, especially in Greece. If you notice the testimonies, there's always an option of giving a political oath and a religious oath, and I have never seen someone taking a political oath. It is always an oath on the Bible. And so this policeman replies, "Well, if you know, hardcore Golden Dawn supporters do not even believe in Christianity. They believe in the 12 gods of Greece, of ancient Greece." And so the story unfolds. So that I'm kind of giving you this example just to show you that the case of Greece is a little bit different than the case of Germany. It is a case where the violence is allowed not through a kind of a combination of incompetency and silent alignment, and in a somehow kind of moment of pride, of resistance against an establishment, whatever that establishment is. Sorry, maybe this is not it. No sound would be good for this. Anyway, this is one of the trailers of... Oh, there's something going on. Sorry. Sorry for the background. That's a mistake. Anyway, this was one of the trailers of the Special Police Force unit that was present at Pavlos' murder. Anyway, this is not important. I wanted to show you this because this is a unit that really started in 2010 as a response to the financial crisis and the rise of criminality that came from that. It is a unit that doesn't have the same kind of training as traditional police, and this kind of results in a kind of a more brutal or kind of different kind of reaction. So within this context, within the understanding that the trial will not really examine the role of the police who were present in this particular scene, we are asked by the family of Pavlos to look into the available material from the court files. So we get a series of files. Maybe this will play, maybe not. We get a series of files that include videos from closed CCTV cameras. It includes radio transmissions from the police, as well as ambulance calls and witness testimony. And all of this material is examined already by the police, and it has been provided in the court as kind of experts, in the form of expert reports, where they talk about what cameras, what is the actual time of the camera, because of course the shop owners never really set the camera in the right time, etc., etc. It's safe to say that the police reports are almost all wrong, because either they do not care or they do not want to figure out exactly what happened that night. So our role within this is really to start to, as you will see in the video, that I'm not going to take you through the whole thing because it's on exhibit and you can go see it. Our role is really to try to make sense of this plethora of evidence, align it with one another, synchronize it so that we can essentially bear witness to the event. And this is also what transpired later. This was the success of the case, the feeling of hearing and seeing what is happening at the time of the murder. So here we have different CCTV cameras from the street of where the murder took place. They're all wrongly set. Therefore, we do not know exactly what time it is. So to do this, we have to, of course, find different indicators, such as pedestrians walking from one camera with cone of vision to the next, or vehicles. And then basically we have to find a way to give a timestamp to the whole sequence, and we do this by observing the arrival of the first ambulance that is described on both audio when the policemen are on the phone to an ambulance operator at the kind of National Center of Operations, and it's also captured by the consecutive CCTV camera. So this is the moment that basically locks our whole sequence into place. We had to work with different files that did not have metadata and listen to minute sounds on the background of phone calls to figure out exactly if there is a voice that matched because the people were in the same room, etc., etc. So that's kind of, in short, this is the investigation. But the things that what it has kind of revealed, let's say, one of the things that we did also is see how the different communications led up to the murder. So these are diagrams. It should be animated. These are diagrams that show the phone calls of the different Golden Dawn members to one another, and those really show the organizational logic of Golden Dawn. So the murder takes place in a very particular area in Keratsini, where the Golden Dawn group of Nikia, that is kind of the area, is basically responsible. So there are a few members who are in the same cafe where Pavlos is watching a football match. The few members of Golden Dawn see him there, text each other. Immediately they text their kind of their line manager, let's say, or their leader. There is the person responsible for security of the specific group. He calls the head of the group. The head of the group calls an MP, and after that there is this text message that is sent through selected members of the specific group that says, "Everyone come now, whoever is nearby, we will not wait for those who are far." And so at this moment, everyone basically summoned to the main offices of Golden Dawn, the local offices in Nikia. They all go there on motorcycles or cars. They assemble and they go on a motorcade to the site where Pavlos is to basically start an attack as a hit squad. This organizational logic is also manifested in the statutory documents that were found in one of the members' homes, where here you see like a very clear pyramid structure where there is everyone who votes. How it starts with what the bottom line says is a sort of enlightenment. Then there is the training that happens. Then there's the middle ground, let's say, that is people who are responsible for the different local groups. And then, of course, the top part is none less than the dear leader, which is Michalogliakos, the leader of the group, very much following the kind of the Nazi structure of it. In the same document, there is this kind of statement, the manifesto of the rule of the leader, that you cannot do anything unless it is approved by the leader. This is proven incredibly useful within the trial when we're trying to prove that it is not only a singular act of violence, it is not only this single person who murdered Pavlos, who came in with the motorcade, parked his car, drew a knife, and stabbed him after everyone else, all the other members were pinning him down. But in fact, this person was taking an order from the ones who were above him, from the MPs, who of course were in communication with the dear leader, let's say. And so this is a document that really outlines that, and also outlines who is to be considered an enemy, the ones that are of a different race, of a different class, with disabilities, etc., are considered subhuman according to this document. And so very few other things that we figured out was the moment that the police arrives, nearly almost 1 minute before they even claimed to have received the call to intervene. We see also, let me skip through to be faster. We also see the Golden Dawn convoy arriving from the direction of the offices. Information with the car of the killer. Then we see, of course, the police officers coming back, doing the round of the block, which means that they have been present for a while in the scene. They have most probably spoken to whoever was there at the scene, and still they're kind of scouting. They haven't told anyone that they've done the round of the block. This is here.
20 άτομα, 20 άτομα της Χρυσής Αυγής, όπου μας ενημερώνουν ότι είχαν μια διαμάχη με κάτι άτομα του δημοσίου χώρου. Είμαστε πλησίων να προσπαθούμε να κατευνάσουμε τα πνεύματα.
So the most important part that you hear here is within the time frame of the murder, we see in this quite blurry camera, and within those few pixels, we see a few traces of there on blue. You see a few traces of black pixels with white heads. So what you see here, if you can barely distinguish them, is the presence really of police. And we know that because they have the attire of black clothing and white helmets, and at the same time, because we've synchronized all of this material, they also admitted their presence. And the most important part is after we basically have proven that the police are present, we see that they later announced that Pavlos has been injured, and the first question that is being asked is, who is the one who's being injured? Is he Greek or is he foreigner? Who is the one who perpetrated the crime? Is he Greek or is he a foreigner? And that is really the only reason why this whole trial has even started. So really what we see within this kind of this few blurry pixels is a wider relationship between the Greek police force and Golden Dawn that is brought into question because it suggests this potential enablement of far-right violence through police inaction and through this silent support. This is something that goes back, I have to say, because the Golden Dawn was established really after the Greek junta between 1967 and 1974, which itself had its origins on the Greek Civil War. So that polarization between the right and the left is something that has always been cultivated in Greece. It's something that has always existed, lurking. Sometimes it expresses itself in extreme violence, sometimes from the left, sometimes from the right, but there is always a sense of whatever the ruling party is, there will always be a reaction to it. And especially at the moment when there is the fertile conditions of Greece under an economic crisis, you really see that the extreme right is coming out through a very proud, in a way, resistance to what they consider establishment. I want to kind of, sorry, that's not it. I want to kind of end by showing you very quickly what happened after that. We presented this case in the court between the 10th and 11th of September this year. We have to say the court was not exactly the same the trial was not the same as it was when it began. So it was quite, after 3 years, no one really goes to this most important trial of Nuremberg, since Nuremberg, but there is also there's a very specific way that the media is being played in a very bad resolution projector with terrible sound, etc. And yet the fact that we were able to kind of align all of this material and give a picture gave really the opportunity to people to witness what has happened, and it has made a really big difference. Not at that day when those issues were discussed within the court, but in the days that followed, within the media, within civil society, within a bunch of other forums that really have picked up and started to understand what has taken place. So it's again, we don't know exactly how the trial is going to go. The video hasn't even been discussed. It has just, it needs to first go into showing and then will be discussed. But we really see that the kind of the Greek society was quite thirsty to see what was going on. I just want to end on a kind of a very recent event that happened almost 15 days after we presented this case in court. And that was the lynching and murder of Zach Kostopoulos, which happened on the 24th of September this year. This is a story that maybe some of you have read in the news. He was an LGBTQ activist. It's not certain in the beginning that the kind of the media was that a gay person went and entered into a jewelry shop and was killed in defense by the jewelry shop owner. Now the headlines are shifting towards a man was trapped in a jewelry shop and was murdered by the jewelry shop owner in the center of Athens. It is quite an important case at the moment, but I wanted to show you this because what you see here is the same police unit, the Dias police unit, as well as the Z unit, that have gone to arrest the person who is almost dead by kicking him and handcuffing him, even though he's almost unconscious. So we can see that after all of this time, after 5 years after the murder of Pavlos, after all of this this kind of work that has been done in understanding how the far right has had the space to express itself in such a way, when Golden Dawn is really under the kind of the microscope now in the trial still. The question is not really about the Golden Dawn as an organization itself, but about the ideology that has come to support it and to allow it, and to, in a way, will continue to find expressions even if Golden Dawn ceases to exist. So I think we should end at that and maybe talk about something more positive.